All right, it's not one, not two, but three petitions challenging Uhuru Kenyatta's win on the 26th of October. This is Afro Politico. I'm James Smart.
I'm Marvin Tumbo.
Okay, this is two guys, two mics, two drinks at our local at Jay's Bar in Westlands. Here to do our thing. This week again, talking about the Supreme Court. We want to talk about the boycotts, the economy, a new Eurobond. My God, there's just too much to speak about.
No, it's not.
Welcome to the program.
That's enough.
All right, let's get straight into your comments. Heather Grace Warohio. Safaricom is like a man in charge. For NRM to boycott this product, it's unrealistic. This economic boycott won't succeed in Kenya.
I don't think it will succeed. I think it's an emotional thing. And in due course, once political emotions die down, people will revert back to their lives.
Right. I pretty much, I think, share the same. But my main departure with it is that Safaricom is not God. That's my only main departure from it. But yeah. Hayden Bixby. Not voting is an action and a statement. People say something by not voting, and sometimes not voting contributes to the election of someone you wouldn't have voted for. We see this in democracies all over the world. See the US 2016 presidential election.
Elections are determined by those who come out to vote.
All right?
Period.
I think the reference is this about those who did not come out to vote. I think that we're still having a go at the voter turnout issue.
Yes.
And those who came and those who did not. Because
but also,
in the whole context, say something about democracy.
Yeah, it does. But also, look at who governs. The governing is done by those who actually receive the votes that have been cast. The casting of the vote is the essence of democracy. Now, if you want to express yourself by not voting, well and good. But also, that takes away something from the table.
Can I throw a curveball? The governing bit is just one part of democracy. Democracy as a whole is a whole wheel and a whole clock that works, right? That democracy in a crisis, when we cannot find enough people to come and endorse the system of governance that they have. Isn't that the whole sum of democracy? Governing is just a part of it.
Yeah.
The other part of it is people willingly, endorsing a decision that is being made by the government that they so freely chose.
But you see, if you look even at the happenings that have taken place over the last few days, you'll find it's quite clear that the motivations behind the boycott were not around free and fair or democracy for that purpose. Yeah, it's some sort of negotiation or some sort of, what do you call it? Just an excuse or just something, some leverage to use to get to power through other means. And which is why I don't think if you are going to talk about democracy, that's not part of democracy.
Ismail says, I'll repeat it again on this program. The major problem we have in this country is ethnic hegemony and the grandstanding, chest stamping by these two communities. I think meaning these two communities, Kikuyus and the Luos. The delusion of grandeur they constantly display by claiming that they own this country. Oh, it's the Kalenjins. And they are the ones who fought for its freedom, so they are rightfully in power. We can do without Equity Bank. Wow, we all know this. It's the current regime that gives its lifeline. Go to its branches and you can see an entity in distress. It's not only Bidco that manufactures cooking oil. There are many other substitutes. Okay, so first things first. it's only the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins who would understand what power is, raw power, because they are the ones who, in essence, have had a member of their community as president. All right. So I'll give him that they would understand exercise of raw power.
Okay.
All right. The other communities will be a bit more of academic. All right. It's a bit far-fetched and difficult to say. Well, how do the Kambas know, what government is, unless until they had someone in office.
Yeah.
But that argument as well falls short of many things. That, again, these communities being in power, being in office, they didn't get there by themselves. They were, in essence, even in the first government, supported by other communities.
Many.
So no one gets into our country, at the very least, up to now, No one gets into
function of
office.
just two communities.
Yes, just by having just two communities.
I think it's an unfair statement. I think it's a bit callous. The issue of communities, number one, we talked about identity politics. Yeah, it's not lost on any of us that Raila would have wanted Ruto, for instance, to partner with him in the 2013 elections. Yeah, everybody would wanted Ruto to be the person they negotiated with and come to some sort of agreement on who is going to be the running mate. Yeah, now. The only reason you do that is because you hope to attract those numbers. So what we have is a political calculation that has worked. Yeah? Maybe in the next elections, you'll have other calculations that will work, which will have maybe more communities or even less in terms of what forms a governing entity. So at the end of the day, you must remember that these are political calculations and they are always changing. Yeah?
No, I'll give you that, but can you also make an admission that we have a cohesion problem, that we haven't perfectized the union of this country? Can we make that admission?
Yeah, we haven't.
All right, great. Let's get to the topics. Let's start off, and we are all expecting it. Some at least were, others were hoping not. But here we are, 3 petitions filed at the Supreme Court on the very last day. So the first, by 2 gentlemen who consider themselves paupers. They are arguing primarily on their petition on the question on the exclusion or when Raila Odinga withdrew and his name was still on the ballot. That is the main thrust on their petition. Then we have former Kilome MP, Harun Mwau, the boss. And his main thrust was the boss. He calls himself the boss. Okay. Yes, we have to give him that. He's the boss. And he also contests the election of Kenyatta on a myriad of questions. On IBC were not prepared, on the questions,
but also
especially so on the withdrawal of Raila Odinga, after he withdrew.
And the time for campaigning for other candidates.
And Cyrus Jirongo gets in there and that sort of thing. We mentioned this in our previous show. And of course the civil society, we the people, I think. John Jomue, is the one who's the main petitioner in that. And he, among other issues, brings the question of just a whole rundown of the preparedness of the IBC. His main thrust, I think, is asking the IBC, after September the 1st, IBC did not issue fresh presidential nominations. And he says from then on, everything else that the IBC had done was just going way down, way under. Anyway, this is the week. The Supreme Court will have to sit, will have to listen on this, at least these 3 petitions. I think any other thing that has been through this petition, including Okia or Mutata, I think they will be collapsed into this, I think by Monday, into this one sitting. The rulings could be different, but it could all be in one sitting.
Take the case of the paupers. Actually, I'm not. I thought their petition was rejected, but if you insist they're
part of it. Yes, okay. At least they'll be allowed to argue out their case, right? Because they didn't pay the million shilling plus, and also they don't have a lawyer.
Yes, that's precisely why I was arguing it might not necessarily take off. So I don't know about the merits for that. For Harun Mwau, the case is that other petitioners, other candidates did not have enough time.
Especially Cyrus Jirongo in this, because he was gazetted on the 24th.
Yes.
That was a day after the ballot papers had arrived in the country.
Yes. Yeah. That I did not have enough time to campaign. And to be honest, I don't think this is neither here nor there. Yeah. In terms of what the judges, I think, will express themselves to is, and they have to pronounce themselves on, will it have had any difference in terms of the ballots, in terms of the spread?
But how would they know that? Because we're asking them to make a valid judgment on a political process. How would they know that? If the reason why we gazette candidates is to give them time to campaign. The reason why we have official campaigning period is, see, we can go up to this argument to the logical conclusion, right? So
we can, but
that's what I'm saying.
We are also informed. We are also informed by much more. And you can't argue that Jirongo had a chance of winning this.
Perhaps he had.
Really?
Who knows? Who knows? Perhaps, I don't know.
And these are the legalese I've brought up to this today. Because you stick on process. These laws are supposed to serve us.
Marvin, Marvin, you've consistently, in this program, spoke about a few things, about rule of law or rule by law. Now, the inconvenience of the rule of law is this, that you have to stick with the process.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
But,
all right?
There's also,
rule by law.
There's also judicial
Restraint
and judicial wisdom. And that wisdom is not written in the letter of the law. It's just to say, look, hey, come on, really?
There is the civil society, the one, I would say perhaps the one that, possibly would take a bit more time, because they are there on a number of issues. The voter turnout question shows up there. They touch on the two other issues that these other petitioners, have questioned in a much more detail, but specifically talking about the voter turnout. And they bring to the, to mind the question of the KIMS kit.
Yeah.
On the 8th of August, the KIMS kits worked perfectly to the T. On the 26th of August, the KIMS kits had a few issues here and there that some people could not be recognized by the KIMS kits, so they had to be identified through alphanumeric or any other means. And to them, this is where the whole question of numbers start to crumble. Okay? That how is it that on 8th of August, by 5:10 p.m., we had the voter turnout issued by IBC, official numbers that no one challenged. But in this election, it took the IBC exactly 3 days. 3 days.
The hypocrisy in these countries.
All right? So that is a fulcrum of their case, and the prayers they ask is the KIMS kits to be, sort of open so that they scrutinize at what time the results were sent and that sort of thing.
I'm hopeful that will happen. I know the IBC came forward and actually
IBC opened the servers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully they'll do the same with the KIMS kits when asked by the court.
They won't say they're in France.
I think this is a non-issue, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I would dismiss the civil society, not even on the merits of the case, but because of the intention. Yeah, this is the same civil society that is pushing the line of having an interim government, a caretaker government.
But Marvin, we have to speak on what is exactly in court, right? We'll speak about those things.
You see,
the Supreme Court judges, we have to give clarity to audience as well. The Supreme Court judges have to deal with what is before them.
Yeah, but you see,
true or false?
They have to deal with what, but for me, I have to deal with everything that's in front of me, including the letter written saying, "We the people." Yeah, which doesn't speak for me, and doesn't speak for many other people, because I don't want a situation, because we are in the Supreme Court due to rule of law. Yeah. Now, you have on the other hand, a civil society that is pushing an alternative argument that is working against this rule of law to say we want a situation where this country is run by a caretaker government, in which they want to be part of. For the next, 1 year, surely.
They have presented a case whereby they are saying the IBC, in many ways, and I find myself agreeing with them, that IBC, from September the 1st, and every of the actions up to the 26th or thereafter, have been blunders after blunder after blunder, all right? And part of the problem of that is that it doesn't give confidence to the many voters or everyone else, even the people who voted, all right, on that day, or those who didn't vote. So in many ways, we have to hold IBC to such a high standards. And on that question, I totally and completely agree with them.
What the IBC did or did not do, I think the evidence is there. The court will pronounce itself on how the kits or the servers need to be scrutinized. And the benefit of hindsight is IBC know what's coming. Yeah. And they should prepare, because these are some of the things they overlooked the last time when they went to the Supreme Court. They fired the judges that they had, the lawyers that they had. Yeah, because the lawyers clearly, yes.
PLO Lumumba.
Yeah, it was too much English, too little substance. And so the lawyers are gone. You have new lawyers who I think will respond to the issues as they are laid out.
All right, now, so ever since the elections of the 26th, or after the election of 26th, we've had a new word in term, boycotts. All right? We discussed a bit of it last week, but now, we have a bit a week or so to sort of take in what has happened, in the market. That is Safaricom, that is Bidco, and Brookside. And the word in town is that there is people who are losing business. The business community has come about to say this is going to affect the economy in certain ways that is negative. We have had Safaricom dealers, the M-Pesa shopkeepers and all those things, coming and condemning this move. And generally, everyone in business thinks this is a terrible and a bad move. How do you say?
The same. I'm also a businessman, and I think it's a terrible move, to be honest. And I'm not sure it will work to begin with. But number two, it's these. If you want to be a leader in this country, if you want to be a president of this country or any other leader for that matter, these are not the kinds of things you do, because you need to protect the institutions of the country. You need to work through the institutions of the country. If there are any changes to be made, there are legal procedures, including the Supreme Court, which has just been taken by a few other guys. But there are very many situations where you can actually address issues. But taking down a business or aiming to take down businesses, because of association, as a political party, for me, it's foolish.
I mean, look at it on one end. You're taking down others, you're building others. All right? It's in the same economy. All right? Isn't that, sort of innovative where, just taking from the left hand, giving to the right hand? So you must give it to the ingenuity as well.
Of Robin Hood.
I didn't say that.
I think the motivations are wrong. Because the motivations are, if I don't like you, because another thing maybe that is not evident at the top is that it's known the world over that businessmen usually support politicians. Happens here, happens all over the world. People put in huge chunks of cash to support one politician or the other. So to an extent where I say, I'm going to support your political ambition, and here's some money for me to showcase that particular support. Should I be vilified because I supported you and not the next person?
One, I would like to see businesses that in many ways just stick to business, all right? And sort of focus on building the economy, working on making sure that the services are efficient, employ, our young people, expanding, space for everyone else to do business, because it's an element the society needs. All right, we need the business ingenuity in a society, other than the political ingenuity and social. We need the business ingenuity for us to progress as a nation or as a country. So in many ways, I would want our businesses, and especially the ones that are doing well, right, to continue doing well, all right, and be supported to do well. And at any point, if they come about and they have to support a political formation over the other, I would hope that is something that they can do in the background, and we're not able to sort of see that.
There's a difference in that the business can continue to run as such, but there are businessmen behind the businesses, and there are certain things they do in their private capacity, which is well within their rights to do, And then number two, it's not been done publicly. It's only now, by this targeting, that you find someone is saying, look, this person, that person, that person, and sometimes these are usually unfair associations, because no one knows what happened behind the scenes. I'll come to you privately and say, hey, could you give me 5 million? I run a campaign or I do something, and I say, no, I'm not going to do that. And then you assume probably I gave the next person, and you go and you use me as a piñata in public.
These boycotts per se, I don't think they would work in terms of getting business from one company to the other. All right, so I'm not entirely worried about that. My question of it is that it just darkens the mood. It darkens the mood of the economy.
Yes.
All right, and we want to believe that we are first in East Africa, and we have investors who want to come and invest in our businesses and that sort of thing. And to think that our politics is so mad and it's so connected with our businesses, it doesn't give us the assurances for us to be sort of a developing country, as you like, all right?
It's always easier to destroy than to build. So you come in this situation and you say, okay, we are going to use the biggest businesses that are there in the country, tarnish their names, make it difficult for them to operate. And then on top of that, now, these businesses are our faces out there. M-Pesa is talked about the world over. Yeah? Bidco in the region is humongous. Yeah? Equity has led the way the world over in terms of microfinance. Now, these are the targets, yeah, of political salvos, and you want to attract other investors to this country, yeah, knowing that you have this kind of situation where if they don't like you, for a minute you become a target like that, politically, surely.
The lessons for business is next time, you need to hire politicians, you need to hire... And if you're going to give, you have to give it to all of us, including Afro Politico.
Terrible.
This country is in debt. Debt. Okay? I don't. I mean,
as if it's going to increase when you say that.
It's no. It's increasing, of course. Of course, it's increasing. Yeah, in fact, you're just catching my next word. We're increasing the debt. Yeah. Which is where I was going, right? Yeah, so this week we learned that we're getting additional 77 billion shillings sort of to pay off the other existing loan, syndicate all of them, put them together so that we can, move forward with paying one loan, that we took as it 2-3 years ago, right? The Eurobond. So here it is, a section, of course, of the public is alarmed, of course, by this growing debt. And some say, quite rightly that we need government to, at the very least, to start, sort of tightening its belt, okay? That part of this loan, I think, is to extend the SGR to Kisumu, if I'm not wrong. So the government still continues in its appetite of building mega projects. Yeah. And this is what is attracting debt. You go.
In terms of debt, I've seen talk that we'll be doing 59.1 GDP to debt ratio, debt to GDP ratio, and to be honest, I'm not worried. Yeah, the reason I'm not worried is because I understand what is at play in terms of the bigger picture. Yeah, when this country has been talking about industrialization,
yeah,
we have never been at a place where we could industrialize. We've never had the power, we've never had the roads network, we've never had the rail network, we never had the water resources, yeah, to be able to industrialize. Now, these, in terms of our delayed development agenda, these are things that should have happened a long time ago. And if they are not done now, yeah, even at the current rate of debt, it will be much more expensive to do it even 10 years from now.
All right, let's add that to Moody's apparently downgrading us.
Yes.
I mean, they did that, I think, a month or 2 months ago.
Yeah.
There was another rating that came about that was not very good. Yeah. But we sort of were able to sort of wriggle our way around it, But another one is coming, and the response from the government has been an interesting one. Said we did not hire Moody's this time round, or we are
not this time round.
We are not clients of Moody, in other words. For them to give us, ratings.
What the CS said is simple: is that for ratings, yeah, Moody's has used their own third-party sources, yeah, to come up with a rating. However, there are entities that are government-sanctioned, yeah, that actually go to the Treasury and check all their books, check the papers and whatnot, and say, okay, they are basing their numbers based on data. Their entities are sanctioned to collect actual data,
yeah,
and not use third-party data or media, yeah.
Moody didn't use media.
No, look,
come on.
Third-party sources, so there are entities which are charged with this particular function, and these also are international entities, yeah. Now, these entities have yet to produce their rating, and government is better advised, yeah, by guys who have actually come and looked at your books and seen what the plans are, where the money is, how it has been spent. Which is, to be honest, is fair enough.
Let the record state that Marvin has not answered the question. Okay, right, and just from this economic talks and that sort of thing, there is Elma Bay MP, Peter Kaluma, has finally drafted a bill that for the first time gives us a very good map of how Kenya can be divided in many ways. So there is the Central Republic of Kenya, and there's the People Republics of Kenya, PRK and CRK. Obviously, I mean, this is about how the voting patterns were majorly in the last election, or even before that. Put this together with the People's Assembly. Put this together with just the confrontation we've had in terms of election in the last 6 or so months. We're starting to have discussions that if anyone told you last year, a time like this, would be having these discussions, you would say, get out of here.
Very few countries have seceded successfully without, and the motivations for seceding have always been, is war. It's civil strife of unprecedented proportions. Yeah, there's no country in the world that I've seen that has seceded based on unwanted electoral outcomes. Yeah, just because you didn't get the votes you wanted, or because you lack the numbers, you don't say now we are going to form our own country. That's not the way to go about it. And I think it's still part of a ploy. I think it will be more difficult to make the case for it because we are integrated. I know you made the case that we don't have a sort of cohesion that we need, but I think we are integrated much more than the politics might say at the moment. And maybe even as inspiration, Kibaki talked about seceding in 1997, and he was president in 2002.
Barely 5 years later. Finally, a minute or less, former Prime Minister, NASA leader Raila Odinga this week was in Washington, D.C. at the prestigious CSIS. And as many of you would know by now, he's become the second Kenyan to address the eminent audience after the one and only James Smart. That does it for the show. You don't have to say anything.
No, it doesn't.